Ooh, there it is. Oh my, what do we have here? Welcome, 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 welcome. Oh my goodness gracious, here we are, Saturday afternoon. Oh, about to tear it up. Ready? I sure am. Here we go. And by the way, by go, I mean run. Because that's the program. Oh my goodness gracious. Yes, it is a fine day to be alive. We're out here and we running. And there's puppies. Hey. Oh my gosh, yes, this is right along with Run Man, episode 37. Welcome, my friends. We've done this 37 times. We might go for another 37. Hell, we may go 37 again. Oh boy, I don't want a baby crib, but I respect it. Oh my God, here we are, out here, living. We got a wing cam going on right now. You guys are currently situated in the left hand. Whew. The right is trying to make up the momentum. My legs are like, what is this? Moments like this, I wish I had a tail. Catch that balance a little better. Whew. Oh boy. Actually, the tail could wrap around me and hold the phone, couldn't it? Hey, no worries. This is just this phase. This is just this step. There will be a step when I have a head cam, perhaps. I see it happening. Oh man. It took me because this thing happens in, oh man. Whew. Okay. That insect swerved at the very last minute. I was about to do a chest bump with a bee. Holy moly. We've all been there. We've all been there. That guy just straight up ran that red. God damn. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, man? It's gonna be okay. That's all we got. Whew. We got time to make our adjustments, collect a little information, and pivot when necessary. And align. Get the good stuff. Go where the good stuff is. The higher fruit on the higher branches of the higher trees up on the hill where no chimp has climbed. That's us. You and I. Going, gone. I'm jovial. I'm jovial today. Why am I jovial? Because we're doing this. You'd think that'd be a regular thing by now. You'd think that the appeal would have worn off. It just kind of gets better. But also, I surprised myself, as I always do. Pardon. As I always do on these runs. I have once again, yet again, surprised and surpassed my expectations. Which again, were low. It was easy to do. Doesn't make it any less magical, though. Okay, people are a little intense. That's the second person that pulled out in front of me when I had the right of way. That's okay. We're just going to keep watching. It's a busy time of day. Early afternoon, middle afternoon-ish, on a weekend. Summer's out. Yes, we've still got a plague on, but it's less so right now. People are starting to emerge out of the dank, cobweb-infested annals of their caves and corner bits, and corner worlds, their apartments, their studios, their mansions. They rub the streaming eyes and look up into the sun. That's the world right now. Not so much here or there or the other place, but just a little at a time, as a mosaic might do. You can track the tide. You can track the tide of where things are going. You can feel it too. Watching people eat at restaurants without their masks on, and the staff not having their masks on sometimes. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, It's happening, and they're laughing. They're laughing. And they're hugging. Children are on the laps of their grandparents. Spouses are embracing. God. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. People saying, hey. That happened last time, yesterday on Shoutcast when I spent an hour and a half or whatever it was talking about how awesome Dan Mangana's flow funnel is and how it affects my life and how I love it. As I was doing that essentially infomercial, people were just around and they were just saying, hey. It was cool. Really friendly. One guy, I was over at the walk spot and I was running. Just by chance, I was motivated to run that time. At the walk spot, this fellow on a bike, he's like, hey, you're keeping up a pretty good pace. I'm like, oh, thank you. The last thing I ever thought that I would hear from somebody is that I'm keeping up a good pace. Like, I don't have a speedometer on me. I don't know how fast I'm going. I assume I'm going pretty slow. I'm not that quick. Maybe I've got speed dysmorphia though. Who knows? Who knows? I'm going the speed that I'm going. If I think it's slow, that's okay. We're not here to go fast, we're here to go places. There's a difference. That's, hence the phrase, going nowhere fast. Like earlier, when I was watching TV and eating eggs and sourdough bread with hot sauce that was way too hot and so good. Hey. Yeah, see, people are friendly. People saying, hey, it's awesome. I spent this. Nourishing myself was definitely the smart move. But we were also just going nowhere fast. That is the third person who has endangered my life. Today, you didn't see it because I decided not to whip the camera around. Whew. All right. It's like, I can feel my sweat glands opening up. Whew. It's happening. Those Bruce Lee rib wing muscles are starting to perk up and say, hey, this is too warm. What are you doing? You asshole. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Runcast. I'm doing this because of a couple of reasons, I guess, but a few reasons. The immediate reasons include that last night, that same tub of hot sauce. It's a tiny little tub. I'm on my third meal trying to get through this tiny, thimble-sized arsenal of death inside of this little tiny plastic cup full of death sauce. Carolina Reapers and habaneros. It is delightfully flavored. It's so good. Last night I was dipping burgers in it, and it hurt. It hurt. I had forgotten that level of extreme pain. Which, of course, what do you think happened? It turned into pain today. You ever poop so much that it hurts to pee later? Jesus Christ. That was me. So I'm sitting there on the toilet. I had no idea I was going to get up and do this. But here we are. How unlikely. Yet here we are. What's the word that I used yesterday? Audacity. I am expressing one of my favorite things about human beings. We can be so audacious sometimes. I am belligerently flying in the face of my own metabolism right now by choosing to run away from where I know I have access to a toilet after consuming an ungodly amount of a painful and stimulating, euphoria-inducing substance, capsaicin. Capsaicin? It was delicious, I gotta tell you. I'm still not halfway through that tiny, maybe a half a fluid ounce of this sauce. Doesn't matter. We were talking about reasons why I'm doing this, and like, I got a ping in the back of my head when that happened. Like somebody took a tiny hammer and was like, I feel like I just had a chiropractic adjustment. Except I never have in this life, so I don't actually know what that feels like. I have been hugged. My vertebrae have been hugged of their natural disalignments. I mean, I don't have scoliosis, but my spine, I have been told, does curve a little too much. One thing about me, I'm asymmetrical. My spine goes one way, and it really ought to be going another way. And that's okay. Yeah, these are the hands we're dealt. I'm still running. Anyway, God, I got this signal that said yes when I asked myself why I'm doing this. Part of it was, okay, yeah, the immediate thing of like, yeah, it's so audacious to get out and just do that. Just because I can or might be able to. That's one reason. Another reason, though, in the backdrop, I thought to myself in a moment of complete vulnerability, while talking about different stuff, clearly I haven't stopped really talking since we began today, this little soft thought, this little soft ping in the back of my head, had an additional reason that I wanted to go over as to the origins of the podcast, as to the conception sequence of the podcast, the reason, if anything, because it's always going to be 50% just because, you know, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So 50% just because, and that's probably going to be the way that it is until the podcast is complete, whether in victory or in defeat. I don't foresee that really happening. I don't foresee defeat with this podcast. Not the way that it's been going. Anyway. Senseless joy is a part of it for sure. Audacity is a part of it for sure. But why? Well, we talked about a few times here that some of these things, some of these profound fundamentals to being a human being are so hard to talk about. But I've been in classrooms where hard stuff was talked about before. And maybe words talked around it as close as they could get. But then the teachers did things like they just had interesting body language, or they were really receptive to feedback from the audience, and they were funny and encouraging and challenging. Maybe made some points that were a little uncomfortable. Oh, so good. Looking back, those were some of the best teachers. Those were some of the best lessons ever. I'm trying to think of any solid one. Okay, yes, they were profound. And yes, also, I can't remember them. Sue me. Oh, God. Because right now we're talking about the pod. Okay, I can remember one. I remember one. Anger management. I took an optional anger management elective in high school. It wasn't really a class per se, so maybe that wording isn't exactly the right wording, but I took it. And I was learning about the wonders of caffeine. And I was a teen at the time. So yeah, there was all the tension and the insecurity and yes, just the flat out anger. Not the happiest guy in the world. But I thought, well, shit. Every few hours you get a 10-minute break or whatever in high school. And there's also lunch. I think it was like a lunchtime thing. I was like, well, I'm going to be eating lunch anyway. It just so happens, did I just run into a cul-de-sac? Oh my God, am I a fool? Am I a damn fool? I think I'm a plumb fool. Yep. Okay. I'll take it. We correct course. Anyway, this guy, his name is Frank Dane. His name is Frank Dane. He is no longer with us. He was old back then, in 2005. And he was funny. And he did creative little things like, instead of assigning us books that we had to buy on a site somewhere, he made little pamphlets. And instead of being crotchety, which I could tell his natural disposition was crotchety, perhaps that being why he became a psychologist and taught these anger management classes, well, pamphlets and humor and sharpness. He was very bright, and he pretty much did a good job of reaching us across those few sessions we had that 1 year of high school. Here's how much I was moved. I'm a decent public speaker, and by decent I mean that it's only that the folks that aren't great are so numerous, and also the folks who don't practice are so numerous, and so you just happen to have this sort of lilted bell curve that I probably wouldn't be as high up in if I hadn't done both those things, practice and also have some natural something. I don't know what it is, but that was buried at that point in time under the insecurity and pain. I was in a lot of pain. It's hard to connect people when you're in a lot of pain, I find. Until a certain point turns over and you're like, oh God, this too connects me to people, perhaps more than anything. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. If you want to, we're probably going to when we do a micro dive into The Hollow, which is a song by APC, A Perfect Circle. Look it up. The Hollow. That's homework. This will be on the test, but it's not today's diatribe. I'm just saying that these sessions were great because this guy was talking to a bunch of pissed off teenagers. And they were choosing to spend their lunches, at least some of them, by hanging out in this session where we're talking about getting embodied and grounding and just becoming aware and conscious. Maybe in the middle of something instead of at the end of something. Maybe at the beginning of one. Beginning of a rant or a meltdown. And he gave us tools. And we talked about the tools. We talked about times we did good and times we didn't do good. And he was one of us because he's a person and he allowed himself to project that sense. It also helps he wasn't particularly fit. He was just a fellow. And that made the points all the more human. He was easier to listen to because of that. Because what are we? A bunch of scrawny, hormonal kids. Or people who were just whacked out on having grown a foot the week before. Poor fucks. Heart goes out to anybody in that condition right now. The growing pains condition. But anyway. Yeah, Frank Dane. Solid guy, solid lessons. They were so simple. And you could tell, because it was a continuation high school, the fact that anybody showed up at all when they didn't have to and had no direct benefit. Yeah, there were cursory benefits. It's like, oh yeah, if you went to one, because there were 100 students at this school, everyone knew you went. And that included the teachers. That included grade makers. So there was a certain amount of psychological leniency you might be afforded if you were meeting people halfway by taking these classes. Instead of just looming and moping. And I did plenty of that too. I'm just saying. It's not black and white. We explored some texture in these anger management classes. I did not think I was going to be talking about this today. Frank Dane. It's hard to search myself at will. It's easy for things just to come up in a really poetic and fine fashion. But it's tough to search myself consciously. But yeah, continuation high school, angry teens. We still showed up. Lots of us showed up. I made every single one, if I remember correctly. And kids were talking. Not all of them, not all the time. They didn't have a lot to say. A lot of them, I learned when I heard them speak for the first time, were dealing with really significant knocks against them in the great race of life. They got shot in the foot way early on. And I've got mine and you've got yours, but they had theirs too. I felt like, oh my God, in this sphere, I'm not being left behind. In this sphere, I'm among peers. We're all kind of, none of us are really excelling, but a couple of us are doing okay. And I don't know, it just felt different than the feeling of just being completely left out of the human race, which was the experience up until that point. Like, oh man, I'm never going to be a part of this thing. The people who are going to be okay are already okay. I'm never going to be okay. I'm never even going to be average as a human being. I'm always going to be a shit person. That's what my mind was filled with. But then here I am among all these other shit people, and we're just trying not to be so shit for a second. It's like, yeah, I'm into this. And I found a bit more voice up until that point. And yes, past this point, a fair amount of the time, even into college, I would say. Not so much these last 10 years, 13, 14 years. But I found some voice. And, yeah, I'd been class clown a few times before. Commanded some stage here and there. But mostly, if you get me around a bunch of people, I'm going to seize up and not say a damn thing. I'm just going to look lost. That was me. But not in that class. So you know what I did? I'm trying to remember if Frank didn't make it one day. And I still showed up and we had conversations. I seem to remember that. Holding court a little bit. I was not used to that. And am not acclimated to the taste of that, even to this day. Don't put me under the spotlight. Notice where the camera's facing. But participation. I was talking in that class. And you know something else? I actually gave a speech at the end on the last class. That's right. I came out with some old world story where I went in. It was tough. It was tough to know how far to go and how far not to go, right? But I knew I had to say something. Maybe I just wanted to justify my anger. I'm not sure. But I felt like, oh yeah, I've got something. we're going to give it. We're going to share it. So I shared a really old molestation experience. That was pretty intense. And I got a lot of love. I got a lot of love from these angry people. You know what happened later? Later, one of the girls in that class had an experience. She was a teen, and she was working at the same time as being a teen, which I was already in admiration of. But one day, I want to preface this by saying I'm not a fucking hero. I'm just a guy. I'm not tooting my own horn here. But this girl suffered one day, and the principal of that school and she were arguing it out in the office, and I was waiting to get picked up for the end of the school day so I could go home and homework and all that stuff. I was waiting at the office. Sometimes I waited, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I walked and did things, but this time I was on the school property and I was just on the other side of this wall listening to this argument take place, and door flies open and there she is, the girl. I thought she was pretty cute too, but in that moment she was just very lost. I knew that look. She was lost. I had never seen anybody with symptoms of having cried quite that much up until that point. And I had witnessed some pretty intense family drama. So particularly from somebody I didn't know, absolutely. But this was after the anger management classes. This was approaching the summer, if I remember correctly. And she was just informed, I learned, that there was just not a damn thing anybody could do. There was no one to call, nowhere to go. When it came to the person who had assaulted her at her workplace, it was a work member at the diner. I guess it happened and she went straight back to the school, and I wonder if was she working and not going to school? What was she doing? Time sequences are all messed up. I don't remember exactly how things worked out. Maybe something had happened earlier in the week or the day before or something, and everything had just gotten brought to the surface. I really don't know. Looking back on it, I'm searching for it. The details elude me, but the immense emotional payload of that moment was intense, because there she is standing in the door, and she's just learned that there's nothing she can do to obtain any kind of justice from the system regarding a person who had assaulted her. I thought it was that day. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe she stopped in first thing after school, because I spent a fair amount of time after school. At school, it was always an hour or two. If I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. But that would have given her enough time to walk down or drive down to that place, start a work shift, and have something happen. Maybe that's how it went down. All that I remember is that she had a choice to make when she saw me first thing upon opening that door to the rest of her life, where she now lives in a world where this kind of thing can happen, and does happen, and is happening. She saw me, and there was space. She could go past me and leave. She had plenty of space for that. And I remember being tilted diagonally toward her. I didn't want to square off with her. This was a confrontational, aggressive girl. She was in the anger management class. She had anger. That's all I'm going to say. I thought about describing her. I'm not going to describe her any more than that. I'm not going to name her. This isn't her podcast. She can talk about it if she wants to on her podcast, if she ever makes one. I wonder if she ever did. She was also an artist. I wonder if she ever found a voice for podcasting. I haven't spoken to her in over a decade. Anyway, well, she saw me, and I was neutral. I was in a position. But I did search for some contact with my eyes. And I didn't back away either. I just held space. I later learned what I was doing was holding space. Non-expectant. Didn't need anything. I wasn't going to put anything more into her world or ask anything from her. Because I'm a kid and I was curious about details. And of course, it's like roadkill. But it's also like, whoa. Something really deep in me is uplinking to this essence that is shared by something deep within you. This feels like we're having a connection. And so I just leaned into it. And come what may, and ended up being that she threw herself into my arms. And wept. And wept like a newborn. And I was crying. And I went back to language that I later recognized as being some of the most primitive self-care language, some of the most effective language you can give to an emotion, particularly a challenging one. I said, I'm here. We're here. I changed up the language a little bit. I'll be like, we're here. I'm here. Now, I'm right here. That's what I said. I'm right here with you. Just that kind of stuff. I've got you. And sometimes you lose track of time in situations like that. I don't know why I'm so sure, but I'm pretty freaking sure that as that space entertained the two of us just hugging it out, I can't believe she would let a dude touch her, but she came at me, Powerful. So much powerful in that moment. But she just kept receiving the arms and giving her own, and as people do, just new waves of tears. And I was crying, and she was shorter than I was, so she's her head's on my neck, and I think I kissed her on the forehead a few times. And there was some release for all the good it did. The last few times I saw her, she seemed like she was doing pretty well. She was